Hey everyone, I'm Dan. Welcome to my 26-hour drawing challenge. Now, let me just explain what this is about. This is a challenge I set myself last weekend to spend 26 full hours drawing as a little fundraiser that I did for charity. I wanted to see if I could draw 260 different characters, all from various Nintendo games, within a time limit so that I'm forcing myself to not have enough time to get all these drawings to the standard I would usually like to see myself. So this is definitely a case of quantity over quality. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how well I can draw under pressure. And a real challenge to have to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with you after all. Now, this was inspired by something called the 2.6 challenge. If you've not heard of it, basically Sunday the 26th was supposed to be the London Marathon, which is 26.2 miles long. Now, I'm just showcasing some of the better drawings now because, as I was saying, we do get off to a bit of a bit start. So I just want to show I do know how to draw and I do get onto some better ones when I relax a little bit more. But yeah, obviously, if the London Marathon had gone ahead, then every year it raises a massive amount of money for UK charities. And what that means in light of the the coronavirus outbreak is that those charities are experiencing a shortage in what would normally be a year full of fundraising events. Now we're just getting started now. Uh, I do start off with basically the basic mascots, which I don't normally go for. But I thought that'd give me a bit chance to start introducing myself at the start of the video before I start really rambling about who I'm drawing. Um, they were all picked from the Super Smash Bros. Game on the Nintendo 64, which is quite handy because there was 12 characters in that game. And what I'm doing is just doing 10 in each of these groups. I've done 26 little 1 hour slots with a different theme with each one. And then I stopped and then moved on. So back to the 2.6 challenge, what some clever person has come up with is, again, inspired by the marathon, is to challenge anyone at home to come up with their own little fundraiser events and to share online so that they, as long as they fit with the social distancing guidelines, then they can try and do their own little part for their own chosen charity. Now, my chosen charity for this is Macmillan Cancer Support. Now, not just because we partner with it at work all the time, but because it made a lot of sense to me. The current situation we find ourselves in puts a lot of added pressure on all of our carers, but Macmillan don't just support and care for those going through cancer themselves, but their friends and family who are struggling to come to terms with it as well. So I can only imagine what would already have been a tough time for anyone to have to go through in normal circumstances must be so much worse with the added worry that comes with the threat of coronavirus and the bizarre world that we find ourselves in right now. Nobody's finding this situation easy, but there's some brilliant examples out there of what people have selflessly done to look out for one another. And I think it's really amazing what people have done as part of this 2.6 event. So, to do their part for their own causes. When I did the Mario in this, I I looked at the clock at how quickly 6 minutes had come by because I knew every 6 minutes I need to be moving on to the next one really. So the Mario one got me really panicked for start off. I do manage to come back and sort of fix some of these later on, but Pikachu, for example, I really thought it just came together really easily, and then when I came back and saw it later on, it was awful because I could have done with it just a few more seconds just to make it look right. But yeah, I'm kind of gutted. I'm going to be butchering some of my favourites along the process of this. Um, oh well, name of the game. So yeah, I'm going to put my own fundraiser page down in the description, but also have a look at the 2.6 challenge website and just see all the examples of things people have done, not just for Macmillan, but for just about any cat charity you can imagine. It's truly inspiring. Now, when it came to my challenge, I wanted to do something a little different. So you'll see most of the challenges out there involved getting out and keeping active. It was inspired by the London Marathon, after all. I could have decided to do something along those lines, and all credit to those who took the challenge on the way it was intended. So, because my idea involved no exercise whatsoever, I knew I needed to seriously increase the difficulty factor in order to justify this being a challenge. And it was pretty tough. I'm feeling okay now, though. I think the worst bit was in the middle when I was at my most tired. So, what I did rather than this be 26 hours start to finish, in case it's not clear, every hour was spent non stop drawing. And then when the timer for that hour was up, I took a little rest before I started it all over again. So actually, I started at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning and didn't finish until 1 a.m. in the early hours of Monday. And let me tell you, 26 hours of doing any one thing is exhausting. I did try and go for an all-nighter, but in the end, I didn't think that was sending out a particularly good message when anyone else is keeping fit and active, and I'm staring at a screen all night. I had about 5 hours sleep in the middle to get straight back into it in the early hours. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how it came out. And I'm really, really pleased with the amount of support I've been getting. I was a little worried you guys wouldn't necessarily get what I was trying to do, but all the encouragement really inspired me to go the extra mile with this video. So I hope you really enjoy it. So yeah, that's the first category just over with, the first 10. Some of them you'll see I do get manage to get a bit more than 10 because I did plan in advance who I was going to be drawing just so I wasn't any wasted time in between. That category wasn't one of them, but don't worry if you know the two characters that I could have put in there, they do show up elsewhere. But yeah, I figured the more times I could hit more than 10, the more it was going to make life a little easier later on because I knew there was definitely going to be some categories where I wasn't going to be able to hit those 10 in the hour. Now, I'm hoping you guys have recognized a few of these characters so far. I mean, the original Pokemon, come on, everyone loves Squirtle. But yeah, you might be wondering why I chose Nintendo as a theme for this whole thing. I mean, it hasn't got anything to do with the 2.6 event and nothing to do with the Macmillan after all. But the simple answer is if you're going to do any one thing for such a long amount of time, you're going to want to keep yourself motivated. And I am a massive geek when it comes to these games. Um, have been all through my childhood, and there's enough content there that I could easily be able to think of who I was going to move on to without pausing in the middle to decide either, because in this challenge, every second counts. The main target was the number of hours, but I did want to get that target of 216 as well. That, as I say, that means each drawing needs to take an average of 6 minutes before I move on. I knew it was possible, but that just adds a little extra punishment for me to have to go through because some of the drawings inevitably were going to turn out really bad. But hey, wouldn't be a challenge if I wasn't having a lovely time with it, would it? I did think of other ways I could do this challenge because I know there's going to be a lot of obscure characters in it that only die-hard fans like myself would recognise, but I wouldn't really have time to take suggestions on, and while there were other games, movies, and so on I could pull from, I can't really see myself trying to get the best drawing I can if I was forcing myself to draw something like Disney princesses, for example. At least this way it's all themed together, even if there are some other games and so on that I would have loved to have done and was highly tempted to include. As for anyone who's watching that's not so interested in Nintendo, I know myself watching other people draw online, it can be oddly satisfying to watch. And I just want to make it clear, I'm not pretending I'm the best artist. I'm not. Plenty of people can draw as well as I can, and I did use reference images as well to basically copy, which I know not everyone can do, but comparatively speaking, is a pretty skillless thing. I know some people might even be able to draw from memory to do this, or just come up with their own original poses and compositions, which is what I would like to do if I had more time with it. But yeah, if you're going to go for the amount I'm going for in the time you've got, you'd have to have a pretty amazing memory and be super talented. But also in my head, you guys watching, being stuck inside and not seeing friends and family in such a long time, I don't know, maybe you just want to watch because you haven't heard my voice in a while, maybe. If we were in lockdown, I'm sure no one would be watching me, but I don't know, stranger things have happened. I'm sure it's a long, I'm sorry, it's such a long one. I did try and cut it down as much as I possibly could, but I did record the entire 26 hours, which I did not foresee whatsoever silly reason how difficult it would be to edit 26 hours of video when I have no experience of editing videos whatsoever. I should have seen that coming. So I suppose, actually, if I should be apologising to anyone, it's anyone that might be watching this thinking I'm going along too quickly. But I just have to remind myself that if you want to change the speed settings on YouTube, then you can do so and just whiz through it all. I'm just not looking forward to hearing what people say I sound like once you've done that. Because I'm not a YouTuber either, I figured either try and keep talking through the whole thing or find some license-free music to play in the background or something. And trust me, you don't want me to get me started on the sorts of music you should expect to see here with these characters. There's a whole other can of worms. I realise I can be a bit quiet face to face, and people might not be expecting to hear me talk for so long. But then there'll also be people who aren't surprised at all once I get carried away with the Nintendo stuff. But yeah, that finishes off the second group from the first generation of the Pokemon games. There was loads of different Pokemon I wanted to draw, and I did manage to squeeze a couple of extras in there. Didn't get Jolteon in there, which would have made just finished off the little trilogy there. Eevee's it's everyone's favourite, really. And now we're moving on to another favourite game of just about everyone in the minute. If you've not heard of it, it's a little game called Animal Crossing. The series has been around a fair while, but this new one on Switch has just really taken off. Perfect timing for a game like this to be released during the lockdown, because it's just the best thing to just be shutting yourself away from the world and immersing yourself in a little island. Because basically you get a desert island and gradually you end up shaping it to your own likes. But because this game really demands you to put hours in to really work for stuff, it's basically a life simulator like The Sims if you've played that. But rather than just putting a cheat in and suddenly I've got money, you really have to work for what you want. And then eventually you get to express your creativity with it. So yeah, I know a lot of people are loving this game in a minute, and I was really excited to include it. It is my first time I've really played an Animal Crossing game. And yeah, loving it. I I know it sounds like bad putting a lot of hours into one game, but the good thing about this game that I'm finding is that once you've achieved everything you want to achieve in a day, it doesn't reward you for putting hours in one day. If anything, it's better to give it a rest and come back the next day, and things will have changed that you can gain more from having seen what's changed overnight. Now, these two I absolutely adore. CJ here I didn't particularly like when it first saw him, um, but Flick, yeah, the chameleon you just saw, something about him just amuses me. And there is a theory going around that these two are actually a same-sex couple. Now, I know what I think about that. I know there's a bit of people not deciding. I mean, it's Nintendo after all. It's not completely unheard of for them to be including same-sex relationships in their games, but it's also something a lot of other developers do more. Um, and personally, I think if that is what they were trying to do, they've done it perfectly. I mean, this is a game that touches people from all times of walks of life and ages. Touches sounds wrong. But I mean, they wouldn't want to make it shouldn't be a statement. It's not a statement. It's perfectly ordinary nowadays for same-sex couples. But there's a bit of a difference between giving the player the option of creating their own same-sex relationship to actually creating some original characters that are intended to. I don't know if they intended that. They've worded it as partners. But the way that CJ just gets so excited about the artwork that Flick does, it's just adorable. But yeah, I wasn't too pleased with this category. I was so looking forward to doing it, and they have such a particular look. They kind of look like toys, like they're made out of felt sometimes. So yeah, certainly the early on ones, your Isabelle, your Zomnook. Oh, I wish I'd have been able to do them more justice, but never mind. I wanted to just put in some of the newer characters as well as some of the older ones from the previous games in the series. Daisy May, the little pig that you just saw there, is absolutely incredible, even though she's got a giant bogey hanging from her nose. And KK Slider, the dog with a guitar. What is not to love? And yeah, I do speed up some of these videos, by the way, because otherwise we'd be here all day. But probably not by enough that you will actually notice. I was really worried that some of the categories that were coming up are going to be really tricky to draw. I mean, like I say, sometimes the trickier ones, like with Animal Crossing, is trying to get a really simplistic design and nailing it. Particularly if I'm panicking like I am at this point about the sort of time restraints. But yeah, a couple spring to mind later on where I knew so much detail into those characters. I didn't know how on earth I was going to manage. So the more at this stage, as I say, that I fit in and get a couple of extras in there because they're a bit simpler to draw, I'm a bit more used to drawing them, the better it's going to be for me later on. Now, again, a bit of a category that hopefully most of the characters people will recognise. I tend to be, say, another Mario Kart comes along, I get a bit enthusiastic about who's in there, who got missed out, because it is one of my favourite things about the Mario series is there's a lot of characters that they can pull from, and there's so many games that every so often they dabble around a bit and introduce someone a bit different into the mix. And sometimes I'm really pleased, and sometimes it's absolute garbage. Like the Honey Queen, who was a giant bee who wasn't even important in the game that she came from, and they thought she'd be fun to play in Mario Kart. I'm sorry, but that just gets on my nerves, that kind of thing. There's just too many other characters that they could have picked. Um, Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to come out with all sorts of nonsense like that all the way through the video. This is one of my favourite characters. I just love her. She was introduced in Mario Galaxy, and yeah, ever since they haven't been able to stop putting her into games. She's even in Smash Brothers now. Because everyone just loves her. One thing that does frustrate me though is she is kind of given to be a bit like, Elsa from Frozen. Rosalina has nothing to do with Elsa from Frozen. I actually think she came out in Mario Galaxy before Frozen was out. But then again, Mario Kart 7 not doing them any favours because they decided she was going to have an ice track in that called Rosalina's Ice World. She's got nothing to do with ice. She's from space. Anyway, Pauline that you just saw there, you might get to see more of her in future games. They did recently put her in Mario Kart on the mobile. If you didn't know, you could play Mario Kart on the mobile now. Some pretty interesting characters in there, actually, and some really weird costumes. Not, not really what I would have chosen, but it's nice to see some of the things that kind of got not on my nerves because Mario Kart 8 on the Switch and on the Wii U was a really great game. But why did they miss out some of the people I want to race as? They do bring back some of them for Mario Kart Tour on the mobile, and they introduce a couple of new ones as well, including Pauline. So that's nice. You'll see I do try and do some slightly more obscure ones as well. That maybe we won't see ever again. Now, but that does appear in games, but then again, I go and draw Plessy. from Super Mario 3D World. Um, we haven't seen him since, and he's a bit too big to drive in a Mario Kart car. So I just like to remind everyone of these characters that we haven't seen and probably won't see again. And then you've got other characters that I do appreciate must seem like a bit of a stretch to people who aren't into the games. Like the baby characters. Crash Team Racing did that recently actually. They just put in baby versions of the main characters. And I might be wrong, there might be somewhere where that's actually been in one of the Crash Bandicoot games. But I think they just went crazy with the Crash Team Racing remake and just put whoever in there they felt like. But when it comes to the Baby Mario characters, I don't really like Baby Daisy. I mean, they did just invent a couple of the girl characters for Mario Kart, which is exactly the thing I'm complaining about. But then Baby Rosalina came along, and we like Rosalina, so we like Baby Rosalina. Um, but yeah, the Mario Brothers in the baby form go right back to the Super Nintendo. They're about as crucial to the Yoshi's Island games as the Yoshis are, so they are more than welcome in my eyes. Now we move on to another fairly recent, not that recent, um, very popular game. Now it's not my favourite Zelda game in the series. I personally tend to prefer a more traditional Zelda game. And I know it's really outdated, this idea of the same old format. Go to the forest temple, get an item, and it's a slight change on the same item that you used the last time around, and just tweaking that same tired old formula over and over again. I love it. I don't I don't ever want it to end. I keep wanting to play that same classic formula, no matter how similar it is. But Breath of the Wild is just one of those games that really just changed everything around to hopefully try and open it to new people. Um, but yeah, brilliant game. Another game that is really good for. They were talking about Animal Crossing being good for mental health, and they talk about Breath of the Wild being good for mental health as well. And I can see where they're coming from. Like I was saying earlier about this idea of just disappearing into another world, not necessarily eating up stupid loads of hours, but yeah. Now I do draw a few sort of fan favorites, not necessarily just the characters I like. I mean, Purah here isn't. I'm not necessarily that fond of, but I get why people are. Absolutely. She's actually an old woman that, in a science experiment, got shrunk into a tiny little girl, which is the kind of mad thing you tend to come across in the Zelda series. But yeah, plenty of characters in Breath of the Wild. Actually, I was a bit worried before it came out um, that it was just all going to be about desolate fields and nothing really Zelda-ish about it. Bit like Skyrim, really. I mean, I don't play Skyrim. There's probably a lot of personality in Skyrim, and I'm just judging it for it. But I'm I'm all about Zelda, I'm afraid. But yeah, there was a trailer that came out where they finally showed us what Zelda was going to look like in the game. And oh my gosh, there was loads of characters in the final game that you could get to know, and I think personally that's why they're bringing out a sequel, and also why they brought out DLC, because it was probably their intention right from the beginning that this world is just huge and full of personalities that they can't just leave it there. They've got, I suppose, some of the characters that you just got a glimpse of really might start to take of a more of an important role in the next game, and I would really love to see that. Obviously, not all of them, um, but I won't spoil the plot of Breath of the Wild, just in case anyone hasn't played it and intends to. Now, when I talk about characters that have become very popular within the fan base, um, it's going to sound very silly for me to feel like I have to point this out, but some of these characters that I draw, you're not necessarily going to want to Google them. uh, yeah, it's fair to say some fans take their enthusiasm to taking what is a perfectly family friendly fictional character and take it a bit far. I'm not judging. It's all a load of nonsense, really. And I like a bit of nonsense, I'll be honest. But for the purposes of this video, I did feel like pointing that on out. Making sure I don't say something I regret saying. But yeah, uh, PG friendly. Let's keep it PG. Now, moving on to one of those categories that I did speed up a little bit. I did think twice about whether this was the right point in the challenge to do this particular game, because I was dreading some of the detail that comes into these characters. But yeah, if you've not heard of the Fire Emblem series, I love it. Um, the best way I can describe this particular game is it's a bit like Harry Potter in having houses in a school, but rather than the students learning magic, they're learning to go to war. Um, yeah, they're training to eventually kill each other. Well, I mean, I can't really spoil the plot line because there's that many plot lines to this game. You can choose a different path, and whatever path you choose determines the future. Because I do go ahead and draw these characters how they look in their younger state when they're still students. You play their professor. We'll see in a moment. Um, but yeah, I could have drawn some of how they look in the future when they're a bit more fully grown. But I just thought, yeah, keep it simple, keep it all together. That was a bit of a floppy lance. Um, because I chose the Edelgard path, the woman you saw right at the beginning with the axe, I do get a bit favouritism about which characters I decide to draw. But they're not all from that house. They are from a mixture. Who, again, I did manage to recruit into my particular class. So it's still favouritism, but it's not just about Edelgard. And it was really tricky for me to choose which path to go down because that second character I drew, Claude, again, I love Claude. Sorry, it's just one of those characters that I just warmed to. He's a bit of a rascal. He's the one who sort of cheats in order to get through and win the battle inevitably. Because they all come from different parts of a country, which are just in theory at peace for a time, but they don't like each other. um, and yeah, because they're so detailed, I do wish I'd have done 9 rather than the full 10 and spent a bit more time doing some of these characters justice at least. It was a bit earlier on, I was still a bit rushed, unfortunately. Oh well. Um, I do have some experience drawing some of these characters, so I kind of knew what I was doing. I could kind of get a bit of a likeness with not much going on. Um, but yeah, relatively pleased with how it turned out, considering how worried I was about it. There's definitely ones later on I'm less pleased with, but hey, we'll get to that. And this right here is the protagonist, the infamous protagonist. The reason why I say that, the Smash Brothers series that I touched on earlier, um, the last thing people really wanted in that game, unfortunately, was another representative from the Fire Emblem series, and that's what they got in the DLC. I, for one, think it was inevitable. as I say, I love the Fire Emblem series, and Byleth is quite different. She does have a different way of fighting, a different kind of sword. But I do get the problem people have. And already had, it must be said, from earlier introductions from the Fire Emblem series. But it is a big series. The closest thing I can compare it to is Pokemon in terms of every new game must have a whole new set of characters, and you end up getting quite close to them. Because I say it's about war, and they do actually die depending on which settings of which game you're playing. Um, but I come back to the Fire Emblem series. You may or may not be glad to know. So I'll talk more about that later. And now we're back to Pokemon. Um, it must be said, I was really grateful whenever a Pokemon category came along in this, because compared to the detail that I was talking about just then, it's just so much fun, so much relief to take a bit of time knowing that I can get the whole thing in, because it's quite a simplistic design. Not all of them. But you'll notice I do tend to sway slightly towards the cuter characters. Um, yeah, they're just more iconic to the series as far as I'm concerned. I do sort of try and include a bit more diversity in the Pokemon that I choose to draw. But I'm mainly being favouriteist and picking my favourites, if I'm being honest. But that's not to say some of the ones that I wasn't all that enthusiastic about, or that I don't sway towards in the games, end up coming out as pretty decent drawings in my eyes. The ones that I was the most proud of, majority of them come from the Pokemon games. So yeah, that's fun. As I was saying earlier, it's not necessarily easier to be drawing a character that is simpler, because if you get that basic shape just slightly off, it doesn't look right. Toad from the Mario series is a great example of that, because anytime I've tried to draw that mushroom head, if it's slightly the wrong shape, it doesn't look like Toad anymore. You'd think it'd be easy to draw a mushroom with a face and an happy, but it's not so much. Really pleased to see, actually, that I specifically remember at this point I did go for a toilet break in the middle. Wash my hands, obviously. Um, but yeah, you don't even notice it if the video goes that fast. Anytime the system crashes or something flashes up that shouldn't have flashed up, you might notice it, but I don't think it throws the whole video off. Because when I was talking about the struggle I went through with editing this video, I was planning on getting it out first half of the week, preferably one day. But that didn't happen, and I ended up making it twice, um, which is annoying. Basically, I found a piece of software that seemed like it was producing a really nice quality video as far as I was concerned, and it was really intuitive to pick up. But the more content I put in there, the more it really lagged and it wasn't keeping up. And because I was using a free trial, it didn't want me to actually finish the whole project without having a dirty watermark over the front of it, which I did not want. I know they're a business and they need to make their money by getting people to actually buy the software, not just freeloading off them, like I was planning to do. But yeah, that was annoying. So I went back to the software I should have used originally. To be honest, I just found another way around it, and luckily this one didn't take as long to do. It was only because of that file format that I didn't think I'd be able to do it this way, but we managed, and I'm still pleased with the result. In some ways, well, in a lot of ways, it's better than the original software, so silver lining there. But what I did have to do originally is cut out a lot of the footage, just to make it with a video length that I thought was semi-acceptable. And hopefully you guys will prefer it this way around, because actually it means there's nothing to hide. There's no, oh, he's done that bit, let's move on. And no, you see every little bit of it. Um, and hope you enjoy that. But yeah, that category, Pokemon Gold and Silver. Yeah, they're pretty much my favourite Pokemon games. There's some really great, not a lot of designs in that game, but some of them just really stuck with me. Wooper, for example, I even named my island after him in Animal Crossing. So yeah, very fond memories of that game. I wonder if it's because, um, I mean, I don't know if my parents just made us very good with our spending money when we were little, but I specifically remember I didn't actually have Red and Blue myself. I just played it when my brother was finished playing with it. But when Gold and Silver came around, I got my own Game Boy, and it was that special edition Pikachu one where the little red light was the power switch, but it was also Pikachu's cheek. Yeah, lots of fun memories of that game. Right, moving on now to Smash Brothers again, actually, but this time the one on GameCube. Now, I didn't really play on Nintendo games before the GameCube came out, and well, my brother actually talked me into getting a GameCube rather than the PS2. Because at the time, before then, all I really played about was Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, but um, yeah. Melee was one of those earlier games that I just fell in over the Nintendo universe. Um, I hated doing that Peach. It was one of those classic characters. I just felt like I absolutely butchered it. I do try not to go back and rub out entire pieces of drawing, because if that's how it ends up looking, then that's just how it ends up looking. That's just part of the game. Um, but yeah, I could not get Peach right for one reason or another. Two names you are going to see pop up a lot, by the way: Link and Zelda. I've already drawn Link twice by this point, and Zelda twice as well. Unless I've lost count already. um, but yeah, it, the thing about the Zelda series and the Fire Emblem series as well is they're not very often direct sequels to the one that came before. Um, they are supposed to happen years apart in terms of events, to the point of the characters in the next game probably don't know about something that happened so far back in history in the last game. So, whereas the Fire Emblem series introduces you to a new protagonist, the Zelda series, in theory, it's an entirely new character, but it just so happens to have the same name. It's also another Link. Oh, look! Here's another Link. And it just so happens to be Zelda again, which makes slightly more sense, but I won't bore you with that. As for the Super Smash Bros. Series, if you've not heard of it, because I'm going to refer to it quite a lot. It's a game that brings characters from all different Nintendo franchises and has them fight to the death. um, and yeah, you do see a lot of the characters that you would expect to be able to put up a fight. The swordsman, for example, against cuter characters like Jigglypuff and Pichu, who you just saw there, which is the baby version of Pikachu. Really good for me to have these games to have a chance to draw some of the characters, because first of all, it gives me an opportunity to draw characters like Peach outside of the category you're probably expecting to see her in earlier, just so I can fit more people in. Bit more variety in terms of who I'm drawing in a space of 1 hour, and also give me an opportunity to draw some characters that I wasn't planning on drawing from that franchise for one reason or the other. Now, Marty C here is from that game I keep mentioning called Fire Emblem. He was the original mascot from the series back when it was on the NES, but I don't blame you if you've never heard of it, because this particular game was never released outside of Japan. Um, Smash Brothers managed to introduce a lot of people to the Fire Emblem franchise, and I'm sure the existence of it owes a great deal to Sakurai, Smash Brothers creator. And yeah, there you have it. There's a lot from Melee. Now, the Ice Climbers you saw there as a duo, I do count that as one character. You'll see that we do that a lot, where I feel like a character can't be seen apart from another character from one using another, and I do them as a duo. So, if any adorable person wants to go through this video and tell me what the true count is, because I drew two characters and called it one, then that's very nice, but it's really not necessary. I'm calling it two. No, I'm calling it one. I'm talking rubbish now. Right, moving on to actually, yeah, it's my favorite Zelda game. I mean, I usually deliberate between two from the Zelda series, but Wind Waker is the one that I really started out on and fell in love with the franchise. Um, Again, going back to when we made the decision to get a GameCube, we got uh, with the Mario Kart game. It came with a collector's edition disc, which had four Zelda games in it, and a demo of Wind Waker as well, which just convinced us to go out and buy it. Um, but yeah, it was really generous actually for them to put so many games in there, because I think Wind Waker was out in 2002, and Majora's Mask on the N64 was one of the games that was in that disc, and that only came out in 2000. Um, you would not see that these days. But yeah, it managed to work, because now I'm hooked on the entire franchise, I suppose. I specifically remember quite early, well, it must be when we just got the GameCube, my dad found it greatly annoying that we just got this up-to-date new console with these up-to-date graphics, and we decided to play an N64 game just because we'd not played it before, and we wanted to know what the fuss was about the whole Zelda thing. So we played Ocarina of Time. But yeah, Wind Waker, fond memories of that game. A good one to draw as well. Obviously, it helps for the characters to be cartoonified rather than the more realistic versions. Back in the day, people didn't like that. They thought that having a game in a cartoon style was offending their maturity somehow. But Wind Waker has some. I mean, it's not the darkest Zelda game. I tend to prefer the darker Zeldas, but it does have its moments. And yeah, much as I love to see it get a HD remake on the Wii U, it kind of still looked as gorgeous to look at as it was in my head already. Like, probably that's just me. Um, and same with Twilight Princess, etc. It's nice when they re-release a game with up-to-date graphics, but yeah, sometimes it just looks the same. And much as I say it is my favorite Zelda game, it's not perfect. I know a lot of people will say, "How can you like it so much when it there was that weird side quest at the end and not enough dungeons?" But yeah, I'm not saying any of these games are perfect. Ocarina of Time is always the one that goes down in history as being one of the highest rated games of all time. And much as, in a way, I'd like to say it's my favourite, it's not. And then you've got, like, the Water Temple, which is famously flawed, but then you can't really blame it for being back in those days. It was still groundbreaking as far as games go, and a lot of the Zelda games are. But it's a bit like when I talk about what my favourite film is. I usually say it's Alien, um, which would be correct because I love Alien. But if I were being completely honest, that's me not wanting to say something silly like Aladdin or Lion King, which really have probably had more of an impact in my childhood and therefore my life in general than Alien ever could have had watching it years later. And Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, There is possibly one other game outside the Zelda series that I would say standalone could be classed as better, but that's a dirty conversation, and we won't go into that. Nintendo is all that matters. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of the games, because they borrow so much from the games that come before, and then allow you to immerse yourself again in that nostalgia of that same format. No one of the games is really that deserving of praise. It's just the series as a whole that I love. Now, Bowser is one that I was going to draw earlier. And I thought, how can I miss out Bowser? But the Smash Brothers Melee group took longer than I expected. I don't know if anyone noticed, there was only 9 in there. But yeah, Bowser was going to be the other one. Worry not if I ever get to that point, because even if I knew there was characters I wanted to fit in the 10 but didn't, and therefore had to rush and try and fit 12 in, which didn't do me any favors because categories like that, generally speaking, I think looking back, maybe I could have just taken a bit more time and made the drawings look a little bit better. But yeah, more often than not, characters like Bowser, there's another category where I can slip them in a bit later on. Now, with this category, this is one of the reasons why I say the Mario franchise has so much diversity and that much potential to introduce characters into games like Mario Kart that are just so much fun to play as. Because it's not just the good guys that you want to play as. the the enemies that go way way back to those really old games on the NES are adorable. And they're not always that fearsome. Well, they're not fearsome at all, but sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to see them in the context of having a bit of fun and playing a game of tennis or something stupid like that. um, yeah, I know that sort of makes it a bit harder to take them seriously as enemies. You just bonk on the head and boom, they're dead. But yeah, when I talk about getting unnecessarily enthusiastic about characters make it into games, quite often I'm talking about these guys. Because even a simple Goomba that hasn't got any hands that you wouldn't think would be capable of doing anything in a game, they managed to put into Mario Party. And that's awesome. And it's the kind of silly little thing that I want to see more of. Piranha Plant, who you just saw, I absolutely adore. I've got a little amiibo with him in the corner. I have quite an amiibo collection, and they bring me joy. That Marie Kondo, whatever she's called, would tell you to throw away things that don't bring you joy. And these amiibo bring me so many joy. So much joy. My auntie would always see them and just say, "Why have you got these little toys?" And she's not wrong. They are toys. But I just like having them around. But yeah, Piranha Plant, if that doesn't tell you that these characters have potential to do more than just appear in the Mario games, Piranha Plant they managed to put in Smash Brothers for crying out loud, and he's so much fun to play as. I'm so glad they came up with that idea. I can just imagine them just laughing at the fact that can we really do this? But it makes sense. I know the Mario series is probably the last thing that they need more representatives of in Smash Brothers, but again, Piranha Plant goes right back to those old games, and they don't just put a Mario character in for the sake of it. It usually shows a different side to the franchise, which has so many different spin-offs, so many different facets that just something as simple as having Piranha Plant as playable just sort of it looks right. It just does. I'm sorry. And then I had a bit of time to have a bit of fun at the end here. Yeah, Peter Piranha. I didn't particularly like him that much back when he first came out, but I I just want to see more of him all of a sudden. So it's one of those that I just really have a lot of fun going to town and drawing. Because again, this category had a lot of simpler characters. Bullet Bill took a matter of seconds to the point that you could call it cheating, and I would not mind. Um, but that meant is I just managed to get in loads of characters. Um, yeah, which is good for later on. Moving back onto Pokemon, and as I say, I am really pleased with pretty much how all of my Pokemon came out looking. Ruby and Sapphire on the Game Boy Advance, really fun game. I remember this was about the time I was in high school, and it became suddenly not cool to be playing Pokemon. I specifically remember one lad who you would. I mean, I know I didn't particularly care what people thought, but you would not expect him to run around the school saying, "Have you played the new Pokemon? You can ride a bike and do stunts." And everyone just sort of looked at him and was like, "Stop talking about Pokemon." I'm so glad we've moved on from those days. And thanks to Pokemon Go, it's became kind of arguably cool to be into Pokemon again. um, but yeah. Anyway, how are you all? I hope you're all well. I probably shouldn't have left it so late in the video to ask such an important question. Not that you're necessarily going to respond to me, but yeah, I hope you're all doing okay and keeping safe. I, for one, am taking this whole lockdown situation very seriously. I didn't get any letter from the NHS saying that that's the case, but because of my asthma, I sort of feel like I know my own health. You know, I need to be very careful. Again, I could have gone out and done some exercise for this challenge. I need to not shy away from that, but yeah, my boyfriend's been going out and doing all of my shopping for me, which is nice. Um, not that being stuck in this flat is so enjoyable. I mean, it is a very small flat for the two of us. Luckily, we've been together long enough that I know what living with him is like, but he stuck his tongue out at me. No, we manage. Um, yeah, talking about health, I think the thing that struck me, not even when lockdown came into place, but sort of in the run up to it when we knew it was coming, I didn't enjoy it. Like, it just the anxiety of the whole thing, I realised quite quickly was going to have a lot of impact on a lot of people. Um, I mean, I talk about asthma, just the not knowing how at risk I am did not do me any favors. So I know in myself that I'm better off taking things extra cautious. Um, if for nothing else, for the anxiety aspect of it, really, the not knowing. I mean, I sent myself to hospital, worrying about those last few shifts at work. They were just a bit mental. Um, but no, I'm where I should be now. I'm nice and safe. But yeah, just thinking about people's mental health in this situation, people who there will be people out there just don't feel equipped to deal with something so different, so kind of mind blowing. Um, so my condolences if you find yourself in that situation. I could probably have given raised some money for a mental health charity, really, but no. Macmillan is entirely worthy, I believe. So again, I draw some of the Pokemon that I know other people like more than I do, but also get a chance to draw some of my personal favourites, such as Flygon. Um, I remember when some fan art was starting to come out from the new Sword and Shield games, and there's a trainer in there that has a Flygon, and I was getting really excited. Like, it doesn't do a very good job as a game of bringing back some of the characters. This one, for example, bring some characters that they know people love and want to see more of. Um, but I did get myself a bit too excited with Flygon specifically because all everything I was seeing kind of implied that this trainer used his Flygon as his main Pokemon, and I think it was one of the first ones that came out, and I beat it with like one move, and I was like, oh, I was really looking forward to that. Not an easy battle by any means, not a pushover, but yeah. Now moving on to one of Nintendo's more newer properties. First Splatoon game came out on the Wii U, and before that, it just felt like absolutely years between before Nintendo had come up with something brand new. So this was breath of fresh air, sorry. And much as it hasn't taken off crazy amounts like something like Minecraft or Fortnite, it's definitely yeah, it's captured people's imagination. I'd like to think. I don't play a lot of it, but I just love. I don't know. There's something about it where it's got its own style and it just rolls with it. And yeah, I think it's because I don't really play shooter games or competitive online games that aspect of it is slightly lost on it. But the sort of universe it's set in is just really welcome within things like Smash Bros. And the Nintendo universes, if you like. Uh, Callie here I'm drawing one of the members of the Squid Sisters, and then I go ahead and draw the second one. I prefer the second one of the two, if I'm being honest. Um, I don't know, there's just something. These are pop stars, basically, in this weird Splatoon world where everyone is part human, part squid. And of the two of them, Callie, no, sorry, Marie looks more like she isn't who you expect to be a pop star. Um, I don't know. I kind of like that about her, just the hairstyle and so on. She's sweet. So what I mean by them being pop stars, this took a lot of getting used. I mean, everything about this game takes a lot of getting used to because just the fashion aspects and this sort of idea that they're called Inklings, but these squid people live in this city and they look sometimes like they're trying a little too hard to appeal to youths of today. But yeah, I like it. But the Squid Sisters, what fascinates me about them is they have their own music. If you know like how the Sims talk in the Sims, the Inklings talk very much the similar in this sort of gargled sort of nonsense voice. Except this one sounds a bit more like they're being drowned. um, but the music in the game is pretty impressive because they have their own tracks as a band, and every so often in the game they have these events called Splatfests, where these pop stars get up on stage and start playing the song like a proper concert. And the reason why it amuses me so much is it doesn't just happen in the game. In Japan, they actually have proper concerts for these made up characters. And it's so silly, and I'm just there for it. Marina, who I just draw there, is also one of these band members. She's from part of a duo who call themselves Off the Hook. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it this game just loves the fish puns. um, I don't draw the other one, who's called Pearl, just because I don't like her as much. I can understand why other people like her because she's got this sort of rapper pink thing going on. But Marina is the talent. I'm sorry, but she does the DJing and she does the vocals. I know a lot of other people love that character as well. Um, but yeah, I think of all the series, I know they're working on a Mario movie at the moment. Um, I think Detective Pikachu, probably got the ball rolling. I would probably personally rather see something like a Splatoon movie because if you took something with an existing storyline like a Zelda game and tried to make it as a storyline for a film, it just wouldn't work. Whereas the world they've created in Splatoon is just ready for them to take their own spin on it. Um, It seems a bit weird, but there's a couple because there's music in the game. I'd love to see what some real world artists do if they try and combine their own music with the music from Splatoon. Something about Marina reminds me of Rita Ora. I'm sorry, I just couldn't imagine that working somehow, even though they talk absolute gibberish. Moving back onto Smash Bros. Swiftly before I get too excited about Splatoon. Um, now, I do remember back when the trailer came out for this game, and the thing about Smash Bros. Is if you get thrown off the stage, a bit like a sumo wrestling ring, if you get thrown on stage and you can't get back on again, you're dead. Um, so there was only a couple of characters prior to this game that could fly, being Kirby and Jigglypuff, who are basically carbon copies of each other. They make this like weird balloon effect and just float through the air. I love how they look so similar. My friend once saw one of my nerdy T-shirts and says, "Why is Jigglypuff turned invisible?" And what she was looking at was Kirby's epic yarn. It wasn't Jigglypuff at all. It was Kirby, and he was made out of string because that's what Nintendo do. Anyway, yeah, the trailer came around, and there was a couple of really exciting characters in there that have wings. You probably just noticed. Um, that kind of shook things up a little bit, but yeah, it was quite a good. There was a lot of characters announced just in one trailer. I mean, everyone gets really excited when a new Smash Bros. Character gets announced these days, but you don't normally get 4 or 5 announced all at once. Now, this one here from that original trailer, I didn't have time to talk about her earlier because it was the first category, but Samus, that weird robot suit that, if you don't know the Metroid series from that first page, it is a woman inside of there, and her name is Samus. And this is what she looks like when she takes that suit off. Um, yeah, she's like I know she's a very popular character for the way she looks, but I love Samus for just being pure heroine. Like a lot of people talk about um, Lara Croft as being the first lady in gaming. It's not. It's Samus. And the only reason I'm rambling on about it is because I kind of wanted there to be a Metroid character in this challenge, and I just didn't get around to it. So there's a lot of characters, villains in particular, that I would have loved to have drawn. So apologies if you were looking forward to that. Um, but yeah, Metroid. Part of the reason why I love Alien so much, actually, because I just love it. And then you've got Pikmin as well, that little Olimar dude, another one of those characters you would not expect to be able to put up a fight. I don't watch Pikmin in this challenge. And Diddy Kong, I specifically remember being a little bit annoyed that he made it into this game, because I was watching it and trying to keep up to date with the announcements, and I didn't recognize at this time of life most of these characters. Ike included. Again, another one of the people from Fire Emblem. And the reason why he's so popular, I mean, I like Ike a lot, is because most of the characters from Fire Emblem are princes or a member of some kind of what's the word? Yeah, they're just full of themselves. Ike is from a more humble background and manages to just command armies with his winning personality, I suppose. But yeah, Diddy Kong. I know everyone makes it into Smash Brothers nowadays, so it was inevitable. But I don't know why. I love him in things like Mario Kart. I was annoyed when he didn't make it into Mario Kart 8. You would not be surprised to hear. um, Again, Donkey Kong. I would have loved to have done more Donkey Kong characters. And this is actually where I finish off on Saturday evening. Well, I say Saturday evening, it was actually more like 1 o'clock on Sunday morning. Have a bit of kip and then come back to it the next morning. Wario there that I decided to draw in the outfit, by the way, that he does not appear in Smash Brothers just because he's more recognisable in his traditional dungarees. I was a bit concerned about returning to Pokemon first thing the next morning because what you'll notice is rather than most of them where I do pick them a category that is just on one game. I do combine these two generations together. Now, I know they can be quite. Yeah, they've got a lot of fans, these two games on the Nintendo DS. Um, but I didn't really play them back in the day, so I don't have as many fond memories of it. Now, for me, this is at the point, like, Ruby and Sapphire got away with using ideas that they didn't get around to doing on the Game Boy. Um, Rather than having to repeat something that they've done before, um, which does happen nowadays, inevitably. It's like, yeah, we've done a pigeon already, but we'll do another pigeon. um, Pretty much everything in Ruby and Sapphire hadn't been done before. These two games, for me, is where the series. And I know everyone says the Pokemon was out of ideas, and that is unfair. There's a lot of characters in this game that I absolutely love the design of. It's just because it's not the one I grew up with, it's just not the one I have the fondest memories of. So whereas most of the Pokemon characters I managed to pretty much fit in all of the starter Pokemon at least, um, the classic water type, fire type, grass type. I don't fit. There's a couple missing from this one, because I wanted to move on and draw some of the other Pokemon that I think are exceptional and noteworthy. Oshawott, for me, again, if you love these Pokemon, no shade to you because they are lovely, but I just think it looks a little bit too similar to Piplup for this particular competition. However, this guy, Emolga, Emolga, sorry, I do love this Pokemon. Um, Now, one thing they do a lot with every new Pokemon generation is create something that looks a little bit like Pikachu. And I'm not sure why. I think it's almost like they're trying to find a new mascot to the series, which will never happen. But if it was ever going to happen, it would take somebody with as much potential as something like Emolga. He's just an adorable flying squirrel. And yeah, as I said, there are some designs that I really look forward to drawing here. Uh, yeah, I like Dealing. He's cute. uh, Probably a bit ahead of its time, actually. I don't know why they don't bring more of these Pokemons back in later games, because in some ways they just didn't have quite so much opportunity to show how creative they were. But yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not a massive fan of these games as a whole. Um, Not that there's anything too wrong with some of the designs that are full on. Pokemon have run out of ideas by now. Your ice cream cone, your refrigerator Pokemon, that sort of thing. That does happen. Um, but yeah, there's plenty in there. I think part of the problem is whereas some of the more up to date games realize the nostalgia aspect of things like Pokemon Go that people love, that they do try pretty hard to bring in bring in Pokemon from the previous generations, just to show them a bit of love, and worry a little less about introducing new ones. Black and White pretty much wrote an entire new Pokedex so that you could go through the entire game and not meet any of the Pokemon from the previous generations. That for me was a mistake, just because it ended up being, oh, we need another bird, we need another fish, blah 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 blah. And as I say, some good came of it, but nah. And it was, as far as I remember, pretty late in the DS that everyone was wondering why don't you just wait until the 3DS came out as well. Anyway, ramble over. Glad I managed to fit these two in at the end though. Again, back to Eevee, like I drew ages ago. It's not that often that they introduce new evolutions to the Eevee line, but it's just one of those iconic things. Like if you ever see a T-shirt that somebody's designed with Pokemon on it, it's either going to be something like Gengar or something like the Eevee evolutions, and those are the sorts of designs that I really wanted to include in here because that is what makes them so memorable and iconic. I didn't draw every evolution of Eevee, unfortunately, because as I said earlier, I did miss out Jolteon. And I completely forgot about Sylveon, if I'm being completely honest, but yeah, I don't know why they didn't just put a grass type in the first place. There was a leaf stone. Anyway, moving on. Back onto Zelda. And as I say, Twilight Princess is absolutely one of my favourite games in the series. But for this, I decided to combine it with Skyward Sword, partly because I knew some of these characters were going to have so much detail in them, and I was really going to want to do them justice. Midna, by the way, one of my all-time favourite characters. I got so giddy when I realised it just so perfectly fit in that she was number 150. Sorry, I just like that little round number. And that's not the only time that happens, but we'll come to that. But yeah, Skyward Sword, not so much a popular game in the franchise. I like it. It wasn't the best, but I think in terms of a storyline, what it did for the timeline and all the games that come after it, and some really great character designs in there as well. It's just the gameplay of it. It just didn't. I know Fee that I just drew there. And I know I'm not supposed to be pronouncing it as Fee, but I don't like pronouncing it as Fi. It just sounds too. I don't know. It just reminds me of physics lesson on one side where the teacher couldn't remember if it was Fi or Phi, and one of the students went for fun. Clearly, I found that way too amusing because if I was paying any attention, I'd be able to remember what Phi even is, and I can't. Yeah, I like Fi. Um, it's become a bit of a tradition in Zelda games to have an emotional moment in the end of the game, and that is partly reason why and the music as well. Anyway, we've moved on. Now I know I've already drawn Link, but it doesn't count if it doesn't look like Link if he's turned into some other animal. And I know I've already drawn Princess Zelda a few times. This is actually my favourite design of Princess Zelda. I was gonna draw Zelda twice in this category just because her design in Skyward Sword is quite significantly different. It's the only game where she's not actually a princess. Um, but yeah, they used that particular Zelda design in Smash Brothers for quite a while, even though Twilight Princess kind of became a bit old. And I don't know, I remember back when Melee was around and I didn't know all that much about the games. And Peach and Zelda, both with blonde hair, both with a pink dress, both getting kidnapped and someone having to come rescue them. It just seemed a bit too, yeah, a bit repetitive. I know that the Mario and Zelda franchises have a bit of a shared um, DNA, sometimes a bit of appearing here and there, little Easter eggs. So that's fine. Um, but yeah, something amused me about the fact that they gave her brown hair one day. Um, and now she goes back to a more traditional design in the Smash Brothers series, and I kind of do wish that I had the option of changing the costume back again. Just I don't know. They went straight from everybody looking like how they looked in Twilight Princess to literally nobody looking like how they looked in Twilight Princess, Ganondorf included. And yeah, this is what I mean when I talk about some exceptional designs from Skyward Sword, because this villain gets remembered pretty well. Impu, you just saw as well, one of my personal favourites. Um, Not so much that particular version of Impa, but just because, for me, in the franchise, she doesn't get enough representation because she's almost as important as Link and Zelda in a way. Well, Warrior's got that. But anyway, that's enough about Zelda for now. You can see I've moved back onto our lovely friends in Animal Crossing. Um, yeah, I knew there's just too many characters that I didn't want to just do the game once. Particularly since, as I say, there are some older games in the franchise that I've never played, but I know that basically in doing New Horizons, they wanted to just rewrite the cast a little bit because it just wouldn't make sense. Like usually you just have another village and it's like here you go again, and they put this time it's not so much a village, it's more a deserted island, so it just wouldn't make sense if all the same shopkeepers and so on immediately showing up. They do manage to squeeze in every so often some of them, which is nice. Um, but yeah, they definitely rewrote the rule book a little bit. These two guys, more than anybody else, kind of threw a load of animals out of their jobs. Because they'd usually be a bus driver or some guards stopping people from getting through the gate, or a post office to let you to write people in other towns, basically the players who have their own separate town if you want to travel between. The airport in this game pretty much does all those jobs in one, and these two are quite cute. I mean, I did spend a bit longer than I thought I was going to do drawing them, and if I'd have realised that, I might not have done my little thing that I do where I draw two at once. And the Able sisters as well, I could have drawn three sisters, but yeah, they're fine, just the two of them. um, yeah, named after the Wright brothers, in case you were wondering, because that is hilarious. They are dodos. They have an airline. I do not understand how that airline remains. I don't understand how it doesn't go bust. Like they literally have a little stall in an airport just to go to random deserted islands, and then the people who are running that stall decide to hop on the plane with you and go and become shopkeepers. That makes no sense to me. Timmy and Tommy, by the way, I just find it hilarious that Tom Nook hires. I assume they're his children. They've got to be his children, and doesn't refer to them as his kids. He refers to them as his staff. That's so nice. I love cakes. Sorry, I just draw some of these just because I think they're adorable. Now, I do go and draw some of the characters that don't necessarily turn up in every village, every island. I nearly forgot to draw Mr. Rossetti, by the way. There's a couple of characters that I just flat out forgot to put in my list. And it was a big list. That eventually I did go, ooh, I need to put that one in. Otherwise, someone somewhere is going to be mad. But yeah, I draw some of the animals that turn up as residents. There's only Lucky, just then, who I do actually have in my island. He's cute. Something about a dog that's wrapped up like a mummy. Just and the fact that his name is Lucky, as though he's just bumped into something and got bandaged up, is adorable. And then you've got oh, Rose the spaced out penguin. Yeah. Um. I could have done more with the Animal Crossing line. I don't even draw any of the villages, like say for example how they are by here in Smash Bros. But no, I'm happy. There's always next time. I kept telling myself while I'm doing this, but I have no idea how on earth I could possibly think I'm ever going to get the time to do something as mad as this ever again. And Wisp there, I was quite pleased with how that one turned out because it's probably the best ghost I do in the entire challenge, and I do draw a few ghosts, but it was just little simple, little cute, little drawing. And there we have it. Again, Reese at the end there, I could have done as a duo if I'd have had more time. But it was just one of those cases where I had a little extra time to add in one extra character. Who's this? Oh, yeah, no, I remember. Sorry. I keep watching the slide go over and I can't remember what I drew next and try to figure it out. Decided to take things a little bit differently with this one. I mentioned earlier the trainer that had the Flygon in Sword and Shield. Now, this is just a collection of some of the gym leaders and so on from the Pokemon series, various different ones. Rayhan here, very popular. Again, with a particular type of gamer, including myself. But yeah, I'm just so glad with Sword and Shield they decided to go back to putting gym leaders in after Sun and Moon. But not only that, it's just part of the identity of the game that they've taken it to a whole new level in terms of these guys are almost like celebrities. The Sword and Shield games are based in a region based on the UK, and they thought about what is unique about the UK that we can take into this new Pokemon region. Part of their decision was football. So some of the gym leaders look a lot like football trainers. Rehan probably more than any other. But yeah, he just exemplifies this idea that everybody in this nation comes to watch these Pokemon matches. which doesn't normally look like that in the Pokemon games, and it just adds a whole level of excitement to those battles. And then you've got Milo, who's just sweet and adorable, but also a bit like I don't know what. And I do try and go back and draw some of the female characters as well. Like Pokemon, less so much, but I do get quite enthusiastic about. I don't know if that's already become clear. Bang about like Zelda and Samus that I like some of the female characters. I do need to make more of a habit of drawing more girls. But at least in this challenge, I do get a fair few in that I'm particularly fond of. Some of the tougher ones, not necessarily built with muscles or anything, because that looks weird. But yeah, Misty here, you probably one of the ones that most people will recognise. I do control myself a little bit because I was tempted to draw other trainers with their tops off. Sorry, the male trainers with their tops off. I wouldn't start drawing lewd versions of Misty, no matter how many fans would ask for that. Yeah, I don't know what it is about Kiawe and one other trainer comes to mind thinks it's appropriate to be challenging young trainers to Pokemon battles with their shirt off. I don't know. Um, Probably the least recognizable in this list, even though she is from the original games. Something about Sabrina's design when she came back in the Let's Go games on Switch. That's what that was taken from. I just absolutely loved. And then again, basically a next door neighbor. Still annoys me that those two cities in the original game. I know the limitations. They're not going to put massive routes in there, but yeah, they're basically the same city. But yeah, I do love Erica's design. You'll notice I kind of sway towards some of the designs that include what look like to me traditional Japanese clothes. Um, and then I do something a bit different. I don't know if you'll recognize him immediately, but he's not from the mainline Pokemon games. Again, one of those characters that people let their imagination run wild a little bit and got really enthusiastic about, which for Pokemon Go, you wouldn't think inventing trainers was all that important because you very rarely see them. But they did a good job inventing three leaders to the. Uh, I want to call them houses, but I'm probably playing Tiv Ireland too much. Yeah, putting a bit of effort into them, and that's why I did this category. Actually, I know it's a bit of something different, but if you think about it this way, the amount of creativity that comes to a new Pokemon game to come up with a whole new load of Pokemon, they also need to put a lot of creativity into thinking the kind of people that would be living alongside those Pokemon. And yeah, Phoebe at the end there was just again one of those that's just stuck with me. She's not a gym leader; she's a member of the Elite Four. Um, it might be because I used to have a cat called Phoebe. I just remember her fondly. But yeah. And then this is the other one. I am slightly ashamed to admit, along with Mr. Rossetti, that very nearly did not make it into this challenge. So just call me Sakurai because I forgot to put Waluigi. Um, and again, one of those categories I have a bit of fun with. It was gonna be purely about spin-offs from the Mario franchise, so things like Paper Mario or the Mario and Luigi games. Um, but you can see I there's a couple of things I wanted to put in there. Not ones you'd immediately think of, but at the moment, this is just one of those guys. I know he looks a lot like the guy in the front of the Pringles can, but King Bob just seems to turn up in stuff. Why can't he turn up in Mario Kart? I would love to see that. And then moving on to King Boo, I chose to draw him from the Luigi's Mansion games just to give myself a bit more of a challenge. Boo is one of those characters where if you get the shape right, it's so easy to draw. Um, and normally when you see King Boo, he's just a Boo with a hat on. And then this little guy here, you'll recognise Toad, but yeah, he got his own game quite recently. It's entirely adorable. It started on Super Mario 3D World, which again was a very popular game. Uh, but in it was little side quests where you could play as Captain Toad, and Captain Toad doesn't know how to jump. His backpack is too heavy, and you're playing these little diorama worlds where basically you can't defend yourself. And yeah, they made themselves a little spin-off. and I can't get enough of Captain Toad. And then Paper Mario, you would think being such a simplistic design, it'd be one of the easier ones to draw. Which it is in a way, but I do have to spend a bit of time with it because if you don't put those thick outlines on, it doesn't look like that Paper Mario look. And I did forget to give him any hair. So if you ever wondered what Paper Mario would look like if he was bald underneath his hat, then there you are. I'm slightly relieved I didn't forget little details like that so often because quite a lot I do the head and then I move down and I think, oh yeah, I'm going to remember to go back and do the back of the hair. But I can't believe I forgot it with Rosalina. I love Rosalina so much and I made her short head, which does kind of suit her, but oh, I'm sorry. And then I move on to the Koopalings. Now, again, there's a few of them. When you see me draw one of them, you've probably seen them all, and I know it probably just seems a bit daft that they've turned up. To some people, it'll seem daft that turned up in a lot of games. I disagree. Um, they go way, way back to some of the really old Mario games on the NES. So yeah, even having them in Smash Brothers, which is amazing that they managed that. And I still find it hilarious that there are two Roys in Smash Brothers. I don't draw the other Roy, sadly. Um, it's almost like they just love the name Roy and they just rolled with it. Um, but yeah, and then there's Wendy. We all know a real life Wendy, don't we? Wears a little too much makeup. Takes frequent withdrawals from the Bank of Dad. Ludwig's my personal favourite. Now, these are all named after musicians, but don't ask me who they are except for Beethoven, because it's the only one I can remember. I can remember their names pretty easily, but I can never quite remember which one's Lemmy, which one's Larry, etc. But yeah, something about Ludwig, I like. He's the one with the brains that's the real threat in the whole operation. Unfortunately, I run out of time here. Just enough time to colour in some stuff, but not enough time to draw Morton Jr. So I draw a little sad Morton face, which I'm not counting as one of the drawings. Um, but yeah, it just seemed like drawing 6 out of the 7 in uh, Koopalings was a bit of a disappointment. But oh well. Like I say, you've seen one, you've drawn them all. You've seen one, you've seen them all. And I don't fully understand why they decided Ludwig was suddenly going to have some weird, like, surfer voice. Like, they all just came back on the Wii when they did New Super Mario Bros., which was lovely. Um, and yeah, something tickled me when I heard his voice in that. I'm not complaining, it kind of suits him. And then back onto Pokemon. Again, another one of those groups where I was really glad with someone, particularly the start of Pokemon, where I just start off a little bit more relaxed and just do them justice. Um, but this one being the first game on the 3DS is for me where the Pokemon franchise started to pull itself back a bit. Um, you don't just get one of these 3 starters like you normally would later in the game. They do just hand out free, well, either Charmander, Squirtle, or Bulbasaur because they just know people like that bit of nostalgia, and they introduced Mega Evolutions. Part of the reason why they gave those 3 Pokemon out, um, just to sort of reintroduce some of those older designs and try something a bit different with them. Yeah, I'm all for that kind of nonsense. They do this stuff like that in every Pokemon game since, and it just feels a little bit like they're trying to do another gimmick that sits in the same place as what the Mega Evolution did in this game. But oh well, I suppose it needs to happen. But again, one of those Pokemon games that because they borrow so many of the older designs, they don't necessarily have that many new designs for me to draw in this category. And yet some of them I just love so much that it doesn't matter that they didn't add that many of them, because what they did add was just spot on. I mean, this is a hawk combined with a Mexican wrestler, and something about it just really comes together for me. Yeah, one of those ideas that just sounds really bizarre. Oh, and speaking of bizarre ideas that actually get executed really, really well, um, Smash Brother fans will recognize this as Greninja is basically a cross between a frog and a ninja, and that thing wrapped around his neck that he thinks is a scarf is his long froggy tongue, which the first time you see it looks really odd, but the more you see it in motion, um, the sort of moves it uses, the more it just sort of makes so much sense. And then this one, I just is one of my favorites. Um, they do come back to this idea of, oh my god, what am I doing with the ears? They do come back to this idea of a cat with fire type moves, but because there's never before been a lion type Pokemon, and I love me some wild cats, I just, yeah, I like that particular design. I like Skiddo too. Um, I'm sure I've heard the anime refer to him as Skidoo. So apologise again with V if I end up mispronouncing a load of different things in this video, but I don't care. Sometimes this is just how I choose to pronounce these words. I mean, he's a kid. He's literally a baby goat, and it always reminds me of my friend from school who used to call. She might still do. Used to call her younger brother Kiddo, and it caused me great amusement. And you probably saw me put this in a little showcase at the start where I did um, some of the drawings I was a bit more proud of. And sorry you have to watch me do them all over again, but I thought maybe there'd be people out there that just want to see my process. Again, when I had the original version and I cut out a load of different bits of footage, I figured you probably don't need to see how I colour in. Things like the Key Mob Bomb, I only really took the black as an excuse to do some colouring in, because if I was to actually literally colour in all these characters, can you imagine? I would be here all day. But yeah, that was just one of those ones where I took a bit of time with it. Love the design. I know it's a bit creepy, but they did a couple of like Halloween ones, and yeah, I'm there for it. Now, this is one of the categories I was both dreading drawing and dreading actually seeing back. It is going to be one of the ones where I don't manage to get the full 10 in. Um, but it's one of those games I love, and I just wanted to do this character in particular, just do them justice in terms of how they end up looking. Again, we're back onto the Fire Emblem franchise, and this is where on the 3DS, if it weren't for this game, this whole series just might have just gone down the toilet, because they just managed to bring it up to date, and add a bit of madness actually, which I love. um, Basically, you can pair up your characters more or less how you choose. There's no same-sex game relationships in this particular game, but they do add it in games later on. And yeah, if you pair together a man and a woman, obviously, and they make a baby, that baby time travels from the future to come battle alongside your characters. And again, let me remind you that when, depending on your settings, when your character dies in these battles, you've usually lost them for good. And why would they send their babies into battle? I don't. There was some. The way I played it as well, Crom ended up looking more or less the same age as his granddaughter, and something about that I found greatly interesting. But yeah, Chrome ended up taking me twice as long as I wanted. This one I ended up again 200, nice round number, one of my all-time favorite characters. But I did really panic when I got to this point, because I'm really trying in this whole competition to pick from the official artwork or from stills from the actual games, just to make sure I'm not ripping off of anybody's fan art. Because again, if I was going to do this properly, I would try and create new poses for these characters. I'd try and make my own composition somehow. Um, this is where James came over and says, "You're really not making it easier for yourself, are you?" And I'm like, "No, but I love this character, so it needs to be done right." But yeah, I hope it seems really silly for something that was for a bit of fun and for charity to worry about something like that. But I know I've just tried to do the right thing because I know how frustrated I would be as I'm not really an artist, but yeah, you don't want to find someone's just ripped off your work because sometimes getting the anatomy of a character right, getting that look right is quite tricky. But sometimes they do it so well it looks like official artwork. um, this one I wasn't so excited about, but again back to the sort of characters I like just because they wear traditional Japanese dress. Well, it's not Japanese dress at all, but the whole Hoshido kingdom is inspired by that sort of culture. Um, and I do pretty much only draw from the Hoshido kingdom in this game. Again, it's one of those where I combined the two games together because I didn't think there was enough potential to do two separate categories. I'm going to stop talking for a minute because I'm so pleased with this one that came out. Again, I just love the character, so I wanted to make sure I left enough time at the end to do it, but it was very quick, and yet I just felt like everything just came together. Again, one of them, if I'd had more time, I'd love to do a much more impressive version of it. Um, but yeah, it wasn't in. What I mean is, it wasn't in good enough for me to put right at the start and go, look how good I've drawn this. But sometimes your first attempt goes right and sometimes it goes wrong. And I hope people who are watching this that I mean, I'm probably just dreaming here, but people who aren't so confident about their drawing, you could probably do it as well as sorry. I sounded bad. No, I want people to have the confidence to give it a go. It's a nice way to spend your time, particularly in lockdown. It's been giving me a bit of allowing me to get myself into a good headspace. Um, but yeah, we've moved on from Fire Emblem now. Obviously, I mentioned Ocarina of Time before, uh, and there is easily again enough characters to just do Ocarina of Time separately. But something about Majora's Mask, I wanted to draw those characters really badly, and because some of them, yeah, a lot of them were borrowed from Ocarina of Time. It was kind of they copied the characters. I know it sounds really lazy, but they, they brought the characters from Ocarina of Time into Majora's Mask, so there wasn't really enough for me to do a Majora's Mask category on its own. But I just had to do it. It's so creepy. Um, Definitely the darkest Zelda game. Um, and yeah, I mean, he's carrying around what looks like dead heads. And if you notice, there's a few Nintendo references in it. This one was intended to look a bit like Pikachu, and someone on the back of that backpack you might have recognised too. Oh, and around Malon's neck, but I'm rambling. So yeah, this I do draw more so ones from Majora's Mask just as I love that style. There's I do feel like I should have put in a couple more characters from Ocarina of Time. Now, if this had been a drawing challenge from memory, this is probably one of the few things that I've drawn that many times. I just love it that I'd probably have managed to do an alright job of it. Um, the Majora's Mask itself. And when I say this is a dark and creepy game, um, everything I draw in this competition, I should probably point out, is PG friendly. um, and I am trying to keep my sense of humour to that as well. um, but yeah, anybody watching the first little bit that perhaps wasn't expecting to see a fish lady with breasts may have been a little bit surprised by some of the things in this video. So I apologise if that's the case, but if it's good enough for Nintendo, it's good enough for me. um, but yeah, I love Skull Kid. I love all these really creepy. The Deku Link I just draw again. I am drawing Link again, but it doesn't look Link. It'll look like Link, so it's fine. I was going to draw some of the other forms in here if I had enough time. as well as some of the characters from Ocarina of Time that are still iconic. Um, I draw quite a lot of Zoras in this competition actually, and it is my favorite race from Zelda, but I kind of thought I'd fit more Gorons in, and I pretty much just drew Daruk from Breath of the Wild. Um, and I never used to be that big a fan of Naruto, but I was just really pleased with how that one came out. I've been playing a lot of Hyrule Warriors recently. There's just so much to be played in that game. I keep coming back to it. Honestly, I should have just left it at the Wii U version, but because they kept adding content, and it's so handy just to have just to pick up on the Switch. You can lose hours into those games. They're not perfect, but oh, and there's some characters that I do not understand why they put them in there, but now that Breath of the Wild has come out since, I do wish they'd come back to the format with Fire Emblem Warriors as well, if I'm being completely honest. There's a few characters from the more up-to-date Zelda games, and some older games as well, and in Fire Emblem, that I would just love to see added to that format of spin-off without being Smash Brothers. And much I was pleased with how these two came out. Love these two. You might notice I made a bit of a mistake with the broomsticks. The one on the right looks a lot smaller and therefore it should be in the background, but the broomsticks are overlapping wrong. The scale's just weird. Oh well, this is what happens when you rush yourself along and don't take the time to look at what you're drawing. And back to Pokemon. Now, one of the things that I like about Sword and Shield is I forgot how good some of the designs were from some of the other games. And Sun and Moon is amongst that. I never actually completed Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon. I keep saying it weird. Just because there was a bit where it just kept annoying me. I never completed Fire Emblem Fates, and yeah, I love it. I never completed Fire Emblem Three Houses, and yet I love it. Um, the, with Three Houses, I got up to this level where I just didn't want my characters to die. And I just rage quit. Rowlet is one of my favourite characters, by the way. I know that I probably keep talking about Smash Brothers too much, but there's just too many characters from a few of these games that if I could just brainwash the whole world and make sure they got into Smash Brothers, even though it's just been too much time since their game for it to make any real sense. Rowlet would be one of them. A couple of characters you just saw me draw from the 3DS Fire Emblem games. Um, sorry, I'm rambling. You don't really need to know who I want to play in Smash Brothers. Sometimes I just have in my mind this idea of how it would be played as. And much as it's good that they keep putting in the more stronger Pokemon, the fully evolved Pokemon that look like they'd be able to put up a fight. And I don't draw Incineroar, but not because I don't think it's a bad. It's not because I think it's a bad design. I don't think it should be put in there. I would just, you can see I like the cuter designs, and the starter Pokemon in particular are just so iconic to the franchise. I mean, when they temporarily took Squirtle out of Smash Brothers, I was really looking forward to it coming back in, um, just on his own. I'm not complaining about the Pokemon Trainer character. It totally works. But yeah, it's just one of those characters, and so is Rowlet. I just have to look at it and feel all warm inside. Anyway, moving on. I was mentioning Mega Evolution earlier. One of the other things they're doing in games nowadays is taking designs from older games and imagining, very true to real life biology, what would happen if that species existed somewhere totally different and adapted to that totally different environment differently. A bit like when they breed dogs, I suppose. And And yeah, that was one of those. I just wanted to showcase one of those examples of those designs that worked particularly well because I'm very happy to see it. Those sort of designs come back in a bit of a different way. The baby version of that Ninetales, you may recall, I drew. It's the Vulpix right at the start. Normally they're a fire type, but in this game they're a nice type. And beware. I don't know why this. I mean, it's a bear, so of course it amuses me. But it's also pink. I don't go for all the pinker designs. I do promise. Yeah, someone to prove me wrong there. And then we go on to the evolved form of Ravelit. Don't know why I keep getting confused. Which the only thing I don't like about it is its name. I mean, Decidui. It just makes me think of temperate deciduous rainforest in flipping geography. But when you play characters like this in games, I mean, he came up in Pokken Tournament, which is a cross between Pokemon and Tekken. Again, I'm not saying I prefer it to Incineroar. It has little toggles around its neck where, because it's wearing a hood, it's like wearing a hoodie and you pull them and his hood tightens up. Silly little details like that that I just love that they put them in there. Moving on, I was gonna do more characters from Fire Emblem actually, but in the end I decided this category has more potential. And when I talk about Majora's Mask being a bit dark, there might not be some characters in here that, your kids wouldn't want to see them. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm not saying. I mean, I know there's a few Nintendo characters that kind of have the breasts out, but not if that makes sense. Or then there's Fire Emblem where they're just complete. um, yeah, I didn't really draw those. uh, but yeah, I did the Mario enemies group, and this just gave me a bit of a chance to. I mean, the Yiga clan I was going to draw way back in the Breath of the Wild category if I had time, and it was just nice for a little bit of a nod back to that wonderful game. And well, I mean, I do sway again back slightly in the favour of Wind Waker, not just because it's my favourite, but again because of the drawing style. Um, I mean, there's plenty of boss characters and so on from the darker, more mature games, if you like. And this is literally what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the creepy stuff that I draw in this category. um, this guy will jump on your back and chomp on your head. um, I told you that for a cartoon game, it does have its more mature moments, if you like. Yeah, there's some boss characters I would have loved to have drawn in here if I'd had the time, but I figured there's probably more chance of being able to have that time using this cartoon style that you find in the Wind Waker. Hmm. Wow, I really did manage to ramble for quite a long time there without stopping. I knew eventually I'd get a bit more comfortable with this idea of talking to myself and recording it. I hope at least some of you are enjoying my ramblings. Um, but yeah, wow, I did not stop there whatsoever. I knew it would be easier later on in the challenge because there was definitely, I've definitely been thinking in advance of what I'm going to be talking about. Um, and as I said, I can get quite enthusiastic about some of these characters. Oh well, that's just me. And these boss characters, they're not necessarily that iconic, but like I say, I just really wanted to draw them, and I do that double line effect there because I was tempted again to color the whole thing in black, but I think that that line just does the effect just fine because it gives him that sort of see-through ghostly look. Yeah, plenty of giant birds as well. I could have drawn from various Nintendo games. Ho-Oh would have been cool from Pokemon. Um, I'm glad I got to draw one, and I'm glad it was this one. Anyway, guys, we are getting quite close to the end now. I don't know if you've been keeping count, but I did do 9 more drawings than the 130 I had to do on the Saturday. Whereas Sunday, I mean, you've seen some of the ones I did on the first day were very rushed, and then there's a few groups in here, Twilight Princess, for example, Fire Emblem, where I didn't get anywhere close. Well, 7's alright. To the 10 that I was aiming for. Um, So yeah, it's looking like I might hit my target. There were points where I was thinking I've just strayed a bit too far off. But part of the reason why you can see me relaxing a little bit, having a bit more fun with it, I had a cunning plan. I was saving something a bit more special for right at the end. So I hope you look forward to that. Yeah, I am impressed if you have managed to listen to me ramble on for as long as I have. That is a challenge of commitment equal to that of me doing these 26 hours. Um, and occasionally saying something I probably shouldn't have. Thank you for putting up with me. As I say, I have been really pleased with the sort of support I've been getting. So even if it weren't for the fundraising aspect of it, to be honest, I get stupid ideas like this all the time. Um, my mind's always on something a bit daft. The big difference is I've never actually seen it through to completion before. So even if it weren't for anything else, I am very much grateful for the sort of sense of accomplishment I've got from doing this. Now, if you've not heard of ARMS, which I'm drawing right now, um, again with Splatoon, it's just nice to see that Nintendo haven't given up with coming up with new ideas. It's not something I play a lot of because it is like a boxing game. Those big springy arms that you see, hence the name, they basically allow them to punch people a long distance. It's one of those games I've been wanting to get Ring Fit Adventure, but I can't get hold of it. Nobody can. Um, just seems like it would be a good idea for me to be doing something a bit more active that is still up my street while I'm in lockdown. That I could be playing arms and swinging my arms a bit more, but eh. The alternative may be dig out the old Wii Fit, but that's some parents. Anyway, some really unique characters in this game, even though I don't play a great deal of it. It reminds me of things like Overwatch. Now, my brother plays it. I don't play it, but he did used to show me some of the videos of the introduction videos of these characters, and it's just nice to see a lot of games nowadays put a lot of effort into character design. And yeah, they did they did all right with the arms. Um, I don't know how long it's gonna last, like there'll be a sequel or anything like that, but they did it justice. And much as you'd think people had stopped talking about it, they've told us that one of these characters is going to come into Smash Brothers. Personally, because it seems a bit weird that they announced what game it's from, I think it's going to be a combination. I think they're going to do it like what they did with Bowser Jr., whereas if you change the outfit, then it changes the appearance of the character. But essentially, they're all the same mechanically, if you like. Anyway. Now, this last one, I just wanted to sneak in here because I just wanted to draw him. I like drawing him. But yeah, he wasn't in arms. He's from a famous boxing game, originally from way back in the game day. So if you haven't heard of Punch Out, you might have seen the references to the little scene where he's jogging along the side of, I suppose, the River Hudson with his little pink hoodie on. They did manage to put him in on the Wii, but because it's one of those properties that you never see come back again, I would have been willing to put money they'd make him work for ARMS, but they didn't. Anyway, Punch Out, much as they did it on Wii, there's a lot of. I mean, F-Zero we have not had it in a long, long time, for example, and there's a lot of characters in a game like that I could have drawn. But Punch Out seems to have a habit of creating characters based off of cultural stereotypes. So maybe that one's best off being in the past. Um, so now we have probably mentioned more than enough about Sword and Shield by this point for various reasons along the video. So not much more is to be said apart from the fact that there was just too much bad things said about, not bad things, but people hoping a little bit too, getting the hopes a bit too high about the new game. It The Pokemon series has always pretty much stuck to the handheld games for its core entries to the franchise. And the fact that the Nintendo Switch is a combination between the home console and the handheld console just gave them this excuse to switch over to a more graphically exciting looking. You know what I'm getting at. The proper home console game, and everyone got their expectations set so high, and it lived up to them. I was really pleased with it. Like with X and Y, which again, first installment on the console, they're just getting used to the technology of the thing. Rather than go all out and make stupid loads of new Pokemon, they just worked on it in other ways, and it paid off. Again, there's plenty characters that are Pokemon that I love from the game, particularly again the cute ones. That it was more than worth my time and money. Um, Again, there's plenty of designs that I don't like, and I'm sure everyone's got their own personal favourites. So with this entire thing, if there's anybody watching who cares about these games as much as I do apologise. If there's anybody you were looking forward to seeing and I didn't draw them, and apologise even more if I basically insulted them. But um, yeah, I'm not saying I'm going to do this again, but there's plenty more that I would like to draw in future. Um, so yeah, as I say, very nearly at the end. Bit of a special category coming up. I hope you guys like it. I know it's not. It's not quite what we're used to. Because all those ones where I draw two characters and call them one, um, and justifying it that way, I'm hoping I get off the hook a little bit slightly for being a bit cheeky towards. Well, not cheeky. It's my challenge. I set the rules, and I decided this would be a lot of fun. Now, one of the benefits of me meticulously planning in advance what I was going to be doing and what I was going to be drawing, it meant that this category was right at the end, even though it's really not something I'm less interested in. If quite the contrary, I haven't played it in a while. Put a fair few hours into the game, but there was definitely some designs in this category that I was looking forward to drawing. And just the idea that, oh, well, at least I've got that one that I've still got to draw that sort of just spurred me along, I guess. And I'm referring mainly to Grookey and Yampa. I love Grookey and I love Yampa. For all the different times I've got enthusiastic about a starter Pokemon in its little juvenile stage. I mean, I didn't even choose Rowlet for how much as I love Rowlet when I actually came around to playing the game. I went with Litten instead. Didn't regret the decision. But Grookey is actually the first time I've got so excited about how much I love the little baby version. I gave it an Everstone and see how we get along. Not that I hate the evolved form. I didn't draw it this time around. But yeah, that's what I did. So, we're finally here. The bit of a mad rush, as I called it. Now, I mentioned Pikmin briefly earlier. There's a lot of characters. For example, Bullet Bill, which sometimes I did put them in there. But for the most part, I thought, do you know what? I don't have to worry about squeezing them in there because I can leave them till right at the end because it's not going to take long for Joel. So I sort of knew even if I was way off the target, this one was going to help me to pull it back. I can just really quickly do as many as I possibly could. I know I don't do them justice. Those Pikmin could look a lot better. That Goomba could look a lot better. But the idea is I really am starting to just whack them out just as quickly as I possibly could. I didn't necessarily need to. So if there's anybody sat there thinking, I can't believe I was sat all the way through this video and this is how it ends. Well, I, I hope you can find comfort in the fact that even if I had done half the number of drawings, then I would still smash my target of 260, which just passed. I mean, I was secretly calling it 262 because the London Marathon is actually 26.2 miles, but Cheap Cheap's not a very exciting place to end it. I mean, I didn't plan it. Um, I think I prefer Bob-omb of the two. Bob-omb landed on number 260. Anyway, woohoo! We have surpassed the target, the stupid target I gave myself. By the way, oh yeah, no, that's right. The system's about to crash in a minute. There we go. The program I've been using, which I meant to tell you ages ago because I figured somebody was going to ask me, is called Autodesk Sketchbook. It's made by the same people who make AutoCAD. I use it all the time. Much as I tell myself to use Photoshop because I think it will just create something that looks a lot more professional. This you just pick up and get cracking. And because the canvas is sort of at a fixed size, some of the worst drawings I've done in this challenge are the ones where, for some stupid reason, I've zoomed straight into one corner, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have done it on a larger format and just spread out because I can always do the next ones on another layer. And yeah, that's what I do sometimes with some of the better ones. But yeah, it basically means you can do some of the things that you can do with Photoshop, including some of the brush effects. But you don't play around with brush effects. You just sort of pick them up as though you just picked up a piece of charcoal, for example. Without all those sort of options that you get. Sea cucumber, ladies and gentlemen, that is an actual thing. Sea cucumber. Um, oh, Luma. I love Luma. Yeah, can't remember what I was saying, but it doesn't really matter. We're very nearly at the end of the video. I said I do 260. I'm on now 280. I was kicking myself after I did this because there's some definite brilliant contenders for what I should have put in here. Metroids, for example, the actual Metroids. I'm drawing Metroids all of the time. How did I forget to draw a Metroid? And they're relatively easy to draw, so there would have been a good little contender for this category. Now, in a minute, I don't think there's a pause as such, but I do decide I need to Google more images because I say there are always images that I've used as reference throughout this entire thing. And I just thought, do you know what? There's a Goomba there. There's got to be other forms of Goomba. I apologize for those two little wastes of your time. I really wish I'd have come up with something more inspirational at that exact moment. But here we have the final one. And the challenge is over. Right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I know I've prattled on for more than long enough. So, yeah. If you manage to sit through all of that, then thank you so much. It does mean the world because I hope you can tell a lot of work has gone into this, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Don't forget, it wasn't all just for silliness. There was a purpose behind all of this, and as I say, all the links to all the fundraising will be in the description below. Thanks again. Bye bye.